Should we build a wall of separation between church and state, as Thomas Jefferson wrote in an 1802 letter to the Danbury Baptists? Or does the First Amendment mean something fundamentally different? In the words of the 2006 Republican candidate for lieutenant governor, does it mean that we should have the freedom of religion, but not the freedom from religion? Should religion enter into the public sphere, or should religion remain an entirely private matter? The separation of church and state is a critical principle for a free society, but it is important to understand what that principle means and what it does not mean. The first key idea today is that the separation of church and state is an implementation of the broader concept of freedom of conscience. So they're tightly related. So that's the bigger issue that we need to talk about, is freedom of conscience. For example, the state has no right to dictate to any of us what to believe, which deity to believe in, how to worship that deity, or whether to worship any deity, or in any other way which ideas to accept or to not accept. Likewise, no individual has the right to use force against others to compel them to believe in a certain way. And because of that, the government has a responsibility to protect the rights of the individual from that sort of initiation of force. So as a major example here, the government has no right to establish a single church and require that everyone become a member of that church, as happened in England. Likewise, the government does not have any right to ban any ideology or any religion, even if it's held by vile people such as racists and religious cultists, so long as they remain nonviolent. So freedom of conscience is the major manifestation of the separation of church and state. The second major idea is that freedom of conscience requires freedom of action in a rights-respecting context. Our idea is to have any force in the world need a material form, whether it's the printed page of a book, or an internet page which is contained on a computer and cables, or a speech which must be vocalized for other people to hear it. So, for example, an individual has a right to decide whether to contribute their own finances to the church of their choice, or to some other organization, or to abstain from so donating. We have the right to purchase and to publish works on religious ideas and other ideas. And we have the right to join and associate freely in order to share ideas and talk about religious or other ideas. In all of these ways, in order for the freedom of conscience to have any force, there must be some freedom of action associated with that. So how does that apply to some of today's debates about church and state? Does a candidate for political office have the right to go to church, to pray in public, to express his or her religious beliefs in public? If we believe in freedom of speech, clearly yes. Whether you're religious or not religious, whether you're a socialist or a capitalist, you have the right to express your views in public. However, does an elected official have the right to impose, say, criminal penalties on homosexual acts between consenting adults? If we believe in freedom of conscience, then no, because that is properly left up to the individuals to decide and to act on their own judgment in that respect. What about faith-based welfare, which is the forcible transfer of wealth from certain individuals in society to religious organizations for charitable purposes? Again, people properly have the right to decide whether to give their money to religious and other organizations. The same principle applies for prayer and the teaching of creationism in tax-funded schools. The individual has a right to decide whether to finance the propagation of such ideas. Now, we can look at the other side of the coin too, right? It's also a violation of the rights of religious people to force them to finance the propagation of godless evolution, or multiculturalism, or moral relativism, or some pseudo-religious environmentalism. But of course, that's a much broader topic. What about the ballot measure that seeks to outlaw birth control and medical procedures that may result in the destruction of a fertilized egg or zygote? Again, this is a violation of freedom of conscience, because it is only through sectarian faith that we can morally and legally draw a moral and legal equivalence between a zygote and a born infant or adult person. So, do we have the right to be free from religion? In the sense of freedom of expression, clearly not, any more than we have the right to be free from the views of a socialist. People have the right to express their views in public. But in the sense that we have the right to be free from the imposition by force of sectarian beliefs, then we certainly do, in a free society, have the right to be free from religion in that sense. With the separation of church and state and freedom of conscience, whether we are religious or not, we can agree with the thrust of Thomas Jefferson's comment. I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Thank you.